Hey guys, welcome back to Horror Movie Rewind. As always, I'm Dustin. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you, Dave, for the shirt. I really appreciate the support, bud. And more than that, I appreciate being able to call you a friend, man. I think we're going to have some good times in the future. But with that aside, I just want to do a quick review of Brute 1976. And this may not have been on a lot of people's radar. You may have never heard of it. I've been aware of it, oddly, for what seems longer than I probably have. Like, again, I'm a big bloody disgusting guy, so it feels like it's been 2 or 3 years that I've been aware of its existence. And for a smaller budget film, they did a really good job, drawing interest. And I've also not been shy about the fact that these are typically the kind of horror movies I like. Now, I mean, it's not bottled into this subgenre or whatever you want to call it. But just old cheese, 70s, 80s horror is kind of my thing. I appreciate everything from every other subgenre. But again, this one, I was excited to see it. And it never promised to be like groundbreaking or anything, revolutionary. It wasn't going to change things. It was just essentially marketed as a love letter to your 70s, early 80s grindhouse. In particular, the murderous family in an isolated area genre, or just type of horror film, basically. And in that sense, it definitely delivers. I'm gonna quickly skim through the plot. Again, I've said it before. I don't put spoilers like in the title of my video because I think that's kind of redundant. It goes without saying. So, yeah, read between the lines there. But I'm going to skim through the plot, and I'm going to talk about what I liked about it and what I wasn't so thrilled with. Or, again, this is a you get what you came for kind of film. So I don't have a lot of negative things to say about it. I got a couple of things that I'll laugh about. But, a couple of things I feel like they whiffed on. But overall, I enjoyed it. Again, it delivered what it was essentially promising. So let's get... Yeah, so the plot's a familiar one, and this film doesn't have any reason to apologize for that. It's unabashed in its fandom of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hills Have Eyes, and a handful of others, but mostly those two. And in fact, it actually cleverly name drops Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it's a scene that's equal parts tongue-in-cheek and also relevant to the plot. Again, this is 1976. Texas Chainsaw Massacre come out in 74, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, the film begins with a typical trope, and you got 2 young girls driving a convertible in the desert. And, of course, they have car trouble. And one of them is an Aspire model. That's the purpose of this trip. She's on her way to a photo shoot where we will later learn that they are to meet another group. But naturally they have car trouble and they venture on foot to find assistance. And of course, they completely ignore logic and enter a literal cave in an attempt to find a mechanic. Why would you not? So, of course, they quickly regret that decision, but not before an absolutely inappropriate to the film's it's honoring obligatory nude scene in which, naturally, the 2 girls decide to fuck around at the worst possible time in the worst possible place. Of course, they are then attacked by several masked and armed characters. And despite one of the 2 being wounded, you don't know the severity of which, by the way. Their fates aren't guaranteed. And at that point in time, we clip and leave their grim situation, and we meet the other characters that are heading to the same photo shoot. I think it's 5 of them. And, it's typical archetypes. They're in a typical van, maybe a VW Bug. And doing typical shit, smoking weed from a World War II era gas mask and trying to get laid with the people they just met. But, this introduction to these characters, it also opens like a brief character basically you find out what everyone's agenda is, and you also get a couple of little like possibilities for subplots that open up between those characters. You learn a little bit about, whether they even had a relationship with anyone else in said vehicle, and if so, kind of a little bit about that. But probably most importantly, you have the driver which that one's kind of silly, but so they hired a guy to drive the van. I don't know if none of them had whatever. Again, it doesn't really make sense, but it doesn't matter. It's actually, it does make sense in context of this type of film because, nobody knows him, and he delivers, again, probably the most important part about this introduction to them. He delivers essentially a ghost story about the area that they're in at that point in time. He's also the one smoking weed from the gas mask, so they don't like really take him that serious, but they hear the story nonetheless. So this is where you start to have the plot unravel in a good sense, where all hell's about to break loose. Again, this film makes no attempt to reinvent the wheel, and on the contrary, it actually is purposeful in its predictive plot, with one or two twists. I'm not going to spend much time on the mayhem that ensues or the order in which it does, but after the characters arrive on this the set where, the modeling's supposed to take place, first they inadvertently run across a local landowner, and I'll get back to her later. It's probably one of the things about the movie that I felt was the weakest. I'll get negative later. But they realize that the other two ladies never arrived, and so they do the only logical thing, and they split up. And two of them leave in the vehicle to go search for her, and there's a very hilarious scene related to that part shortly after. And then the rest of them, like, while they were either trying to do their jobs, they all like started wandering around in places that they had no business being. So you do have the film pan back a couple of times during and after this to the original two ladies, where you find out just how shitty things had gotten for them, one more than the other. But it's at that point, I'm going to kind of divert from the plot because, again, I'm not going to spend much more time on the plot. We'll sum it up. But that's when I noticed something. And again, like, it's absolutely a love letter paying homage to other movies. And it has, like, no problems. Not only, I'm not calling it a ripoff, but borrowing. But again, I think it's almost, there are some like little Easter egg things, I think, maybe I'm digging too deep, that are present with the antagonists that we're starting to meet now. We've already met a couple of them throughout the film to this point. But I'm going to divert again from the plot. And I'd like to talk about that real quick before we kind of wrap it up. Again, there's not a whole lot to say about this movie. But yeah, don't make any mistakes. There's nobody actor-wise in this film is going to win an Oscar ever. But again, it's a low-budget film, and they did their job. And I guess you could also say, to my point, or what I was, giving to the film, its point, is that the schlock, the cheese, for lack of a better word, shitty acting is kind of part of it. But yeah, so I want to talk real quick about the antagonists, and it's actually more the designers and I guess the writers than it is the actors. You don't really, if any, have much dialogue. So we're really talking about the costume. I couldn't help but think, and therefore have to acknowledge, that several of the members of this murderous family, quote unquote, are all like nods and slight homages to Leatherfaces throughout the cinematic years. Again, film wears its heart on its sleeve in respect to that franchise. So, and again, it's not something that is necessary to pick up on, but I guess just kind of having fun with it. And I don't think that I'm like reaching too much. This is what this movie is, but essentially you have a representative for Leatherface throughout the franchise. Again, I just said that, but so you got Brutus, who pretty much serves as the main like murderous antagonist, and he plays probably the most stereotypical Leatherface role in the sense that like he's a speechless, somewhat like, you know, Gimp-like character, but almost supernaturally strong, and doesn't seem to have an agenda other than like killing on order, like because he's essentially coached to. Yeah, and he wears a mask like most of them do, although he seemed to have chosen like a dog, or I mean, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be the face of a living creature, but looks more like a dog, a wolf, or even maybe like a coyote. I don't know. But, you know, he's kind of like the most generic of the characters, and it kind of serves as being like, you know, overall view of Leatherface. Then you have Daisy, who is really the only of these that has actual dialogue, or at least extended dialogue. And I think the first ones you actually hear speak. And it's the gender fluid character, and it's not hard at all to like pinpoint what Leatherface that is, you know, paying homage to, and, you know, be Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Next Generation. And then you have several, one or two, I don't even remember their names, but like, again, they kind of play the, like, just trying to think how to choose my words correctly. Low intelligence, killing machine, and almost like a childlike disposition. Like they don't know how to be without being ordered around by that person we'll get to later. But, you know, you could point at a couple of different movies in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre catalog that's essentially all Leatherface was, whether you want to talk about the like reboot, and, you know, whether it was a Hewitt family or fill in the blank, you know, that character pops up a lot. Or just like where they make his intelligence obvious because it doesn't exist, right? And then finally you have, this might be the biggest stretch of what I'm saying, but it doesn't matter. I'm just having fun with it, and that's what this movie is. It's not going to reveal something huge about the plot. But you have the character of Zeus. It's fucking vape. Zeus, and again, it's a stretch, but he's the character that unmasks himself, and he speaks and mentions that he can speak 4 languages and all this shit. And again, I'm not going to go through his whole story and, you know, what happens to him, but if I'm going to place, you know, him with a Leatherface, because again, they're all mask-wearing psychopaths, and this movie is essentially, you know, again, the love letter. I have to go with one that was like really hated. Like, you don't even really hear much about it anymore. It was just so like brushed under the rug. But the Leatherface film that came out probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and I remember waiting up to 3 a.m. to watch this movie, like to stream it, and I'm not so different than those other people. It was interesting for a while, but then it just really shit the bed, I thought, at the end. But the point of this is, the Zeus character, you know, he does kind of mirror the Leatherface in that movie. And I think that is why a lot of people hated that film, was because it's absolutely contrary to every other version, regardless of, you know, what the backstory of Leatherface was, because he's portrayed as like a likable, like relatively intelligent, like normal kid that just had some bad shit happen. And then he just basically erodes into the person that would become Leatherface. So I'm going to put Zeus as the Leatherface in the, like, I think it was 2017 or 18 film. Anyways, yeah, this was just fun for me. None of this really fucking matters, and whether you see it or not, I mean, there's some of them that are way more transparent than the others. Like I said, the Daisy character, but they're all like in some way representative of a Leatherface character, and that's cool. And like, I like movies like that, although the plot rarely ever like delivers. It's kind of like it's like Mortal Kombat or some shit like that, or like even like pro wrestling. I'm not a big fan anymore, but I was as a kid. But the costume and just that kind of stuff like is fun, dude. It's schlocky, but it's fun. But I couldn't help but notice that there's basically a bunch of generations of Leatherface like nods running around. And I was gonna cut this and do one more scene, but I'll just go ahead and wrap it up because there really isn't much to say about this. Maybe watch it; it's fun. If you understand what I'm telling you're getting into, it is exactly that. Now, again, I've kept alluding to the one thing that I really didn't like about it, and it's the only thing I'm going to show clips from, in this video. And I don't care so much for the inevitable origin story that's delivered of how they came to be there. I didn't care so much for the attempt for it to be a surprise. Well, I don't even think it was supposed to be to us. It was just weird on film that who ended up becoming the main protagonist, her shock in it. But, the whole political thing at the end, and I'm not talking about today's political climate. I'm just saying it was kind of silly. And, even the character, the protagonist, asked the question about what's killing got to do with that. And she doesn't get a normal answer. No, of course you could just say, well, obviously all these people are psychopaths, sociopaths. They're crazy or they're demented in some way or another. So it doesn't matter. These movies aren't supposed to have definitive, okay, I guess that makes sense type shit to them. None of that's my problem. I just wanted to see, that kind of film. But it got cringy to me this has nothing to do with her race. It has nothing to do with gender. But the lady that ended up playing Mama Birdie that we met earlier in the movie, and there was no secret or surprise that she was going to be affiliated with this group of psychopaths. Maybe that role just ain't for you, man. I'm not trying to bash that actress, but the worst part of the movie was probably the last 10, maybe 15 minutes when she kind of took the reins and was doing most of the dialogue. And again, it's nothing about her delivery. It's just, and I think I've said this several times in several other videos, I was laughing my ass off and pausing it. And we're going to look at a couple of clips here in a second. It looks so shitty. And I will kind of point a little bit of blame at the costume design. And I know a lot of blame at it, but then I know, again, I mentioned, this film was operating, I don't know the budget, but you can watch it and see. And if you know anything about film, that they didn't have a lot to work with, but I think that they really dropped the ball with her costume design because it just looked fucking absurd. It was, when I say laughable, literally. My face, if you know what I mean, I laughed so hard and kept rewinding that my face was hurting, and it didn't help. Now, again, I know she's reading the script, but a lot of times stuff like this, her physical movement and mannerisms, those are all hers now, and it was so fucking silly. So let's look at a couple of those real quick. And again, this movie didn't promise you, fucking Oscars or or genre manipulating film, but just watch what I'm talking about, and before I round it up, then we can laugh about that for a second.
And for this test, darling, it is you. So, will you join our family?
So I keep finding these little things that are just worth laughing at in this end scene. Something that really, in a funny way, got on my wife's nerves, and it's the fact that she can't see shit out of that damn pterodactyl mask. And I just feel like when they cut that scene, it looks a lot like this.
Country-ass fucked up town. Shit flying in my mouth. The fuck? I can't see pollen. And let's get the fuck out this country, motherfucker.
One character even rolls her fucking eyes during this teddy bear scene I'm about to show you. Just one more for the road. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. I'm Dustin, Horror Movie Rewind. We'll see you next time.